Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast. An exploration of ancient wisdom.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, we are on episode number
58.
Waka waka, my name is Shama Sangeeta.
I am Priyadarshini.
And my name is Shamali, and welcome back. Thanks for tuning back in, sticking with us this far in the journey.
Yes, we are reading the Bhagavad Gita from start to finish, and today is a very special episode because we are starting episode number 8. I thought you guys were going to join me on that.
Episode
not
8.
episode 8. Chapter 8.
Priya and I were looking like, what? What happened?
What number are we saying?
Nobody joined me on that because you guys are like, you guys usually dance together, but
It's
I get
just-
it.
we got
Chapter
confused.
8. We're starting chapter 8.
Wow.
So thank you so much for
episode
joining us.
8, way back then. If you haven't heard episode 8, you should take this moment as a sign to go back and listen to our beginning
I
episodes.
feel like they probably listened
probably
to it.
have.
If you're all the way
We
over
have
here,
faithful fans.
I know, you're so sweet. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
So
No, we
8 plus
really-
50. 58. We're on episode 58.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So where are we, ladies? I mean, we wrapped up essentially chapter 7 last episode.
Yes, we
Chapter
did.
7, knowledge of the absolute, where basically chapter 7 explains how one can become a fully Krishna conscious person. Because going back to the ending of text 30, it says, we talked a lot about association, about how it's a gradual process. And essentially the beginning of Krishna consciousness is association of persons who are Krishna conscious. Because when we're in such association, spirituality, everything becomes more real. It brings it to a very tangible platform where one can be directly in touch with the Supreme Lord. And by his grace, I like how they use the word his grace, by Krishna's mercy or grace, we can finally understand Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah, by the association of other like-minded Krishna conscious folks, one can really understand the constitutional position of the living entity and how we forget Krishna and how we
Right.
don't want to forget Krishna.
Right, because that's kind of what happens. That's the reality for all of us, right? In this material realm, we become entangled in material activities. We become forgetful of the love that's actually already within us. It's not something that we have to reach externally for. And that's how we gradually develop then Krishna consciousness in the association of people who are directly in touch with Krishna. And then us, the living entity, we can understand then, oh, okay, due to forgetfulness of Krishna, we've become more and more conditioned by the laws of material nature. And then we can understand, okay, I've now been given a human life form. Let me utilize that to regain the Krishna consciousness, the consciousness of Krishna that I once had, and fully utilize this life form to attain what they call the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord.
Beautiful.
So that's basically chapter 7 in a nutshell. You're learning about Krishna. You're learning about different people that approach Krishna. You're learning your constitution. This whole Bhagavad Gita, we're really learning about Krishna, but they're separated into different chapters to give us little chunks at a time so that we can digest it. So if you are interested to see what happened before this, go check it out. As we said, you probably already did.
Yeah.
And so now we get to come to chapter 8, attaining the Supreme.
So we were learning about the Supreme, and now we're learning about how to attain the Supreme.
That's right.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
awesome.
All right, the invocation letters.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Translation: I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual teacher opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. All right.
Excitement.
This is exciting. Chapter 8, guys.
Like if you hold the book, we're pretty
Almost
much
there.
almost halfway through, you know?
Wow.
Wow.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Very nice. Alrighty.
I'm like doing mental math. I'm like, there's 18 chapters and we're on chapter 8. So we're actually two and a quarter.
But some chapters are longer than others.
You know, Priyadarshini actually used to be, fun fact, a math teacher.
Yeah.
So it's really
why.
great.
That's how my brain works.
You know what's so crazy? I was like just reflecting for a second on how far we've come, even if it was episode 8 to episode 58. You know, we've come such a long way. And so it wouldn't have been possible without you two ladies and also our team, Ella, our director of social, and Abhijit, our producer, who makes this happen every single week. week. So thank you so much.
It really,
Honestly.
yeah, it feels like Krishna sent this perfect dream team where each of us are good at what we do and we couldn't do it without the rest, you know?
Yes.
We're super grateful. I think at some point we'll post a picture of what the behind the scenes looks like. It's crazy.
It is a little wild.
We love it.
We love it.
It's so funny because when we were doing the sound check, there was all these voices going on, like our previous recording for sound check, our current voices. It was like 20 voices and it was chaotic. And I was like, in my element. It feels like I'm back in the classroom because I'm also a teacher. So anyone who's a teacher out there knows what having like hundreds of children shouting at your face all at once feels like. Alrighty tighty. Chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme Priya Darshan. You want to take it away with text 1?
Yes. Arjuna inquired, "O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me."
All right. So
Okay.
we got to break this down.
I love this. Okay.
yeah.
So just taking this back, Krishna has been talking for a while, right? Explaining
Yes.
a lot of fun things.
And remind us, where are they in the first place?
They're on a battlefield in a city called Kurukshetra, which is
You can
a
still go there.
place, a still place that you can go today. And so they're having this whole conversation. Everyone's kind of eavesdropping. The soldiers, like, they don't have Candy Crush, so they have nothing other than to do but to just listen and eavesdrop on this conversation. So they're surrounded by all of these soldiers who are essentially tapping their foot and waiting for this conversation to
when's
be
the
over.
battle going to begin?
Yeah, when are we going to start this war? And so what's interesting is that we've heard Krishna talk for a few verses back to back to back to back. And what's great about chapter 8 is that starts off with Arjuna going like, dude, what are you actually talking about? So like Krishna's been talking a lot and now Arjuna's asking all of these questions that I'm sure that we also ask when we're reading the Gita as well. Like what is
Right.
Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? He put it all in one verse because I think he wasn't paying attention or he didn't quite understand it all, but he's asking a lot of questions right now.
And I think asking for our sake, were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say also clarifications, right?
Right.
Because
Oh,
I think
100%.
Krishna's talked like in so much detail about so many different things. And so he's like, okay, here are all the main things I think I got from you. Like, I'm going to say it back to you. Can you
Right.
just tell, like, just,
He is practicing active listening, which is a very
Yes.
good quality of communication.
yeah.
Arjuna is practicing active listening.
And if you feel that you and your spouse are having troubles, practice active listening. No, because that's the problem solving in most relationships.
Yes.
Truly.
You're like,
Yes.
I'm mad at you. I hear that you are mad at me. Is that correct?
It is solved. We are good now. Thank you for
See, active listening. See, even Krishna and Arjuna practice active listening. This is great therapy.
Okay, so I want to say about this, like
Yes.
there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main questions. And
right.
Arjuna's asking 5 main questions. So what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is material manifestation and what are demigods? And
Right.
we're actually going to get the answer to all 5. So we're going to keep track and we're going to come back to this and like tie it back to the answers. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Anything else we
Because
want to
as
add
we've
here?
said in our previous episode, Brahman can mean many things. So Arjuna's asking again. So there's definitely going to be more detail about that. But one fun fact, the Srimad Bhagavatam explains the supreme absolute truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Those 3 we've talked about before. If there's any confusion, we're going to get to it. Yeah.
All right.
We're all looking at each other like, is that it?
Actually, we thought you were going to go longer.
I know.
So we got
I was
really
like,
comfortable.
I was like, I'll step back. But we're good. Text
do
2.
it.
Oh my God. That's
Text
the
2 is
fastest we've
Shamas
ever
and
gotten
Gita.
to another text.
Oh, one
thank
thing I
you.
like, which isn't one of Arjuna's
Okay.
questions, so it's not going to come up again. It might come up again. So just let me
Chaos.
say it. Arjuna also inquires about Atma. Who knows? What is Atma?
The soul.
Soul, spirit.
Yes, it refers to, all of that. Body, soul, and mind. That would be a good yoga studio name. Atma
I'm sure
Yoga.
there's
I'm
one.
sure there's
Probably.
multiple.
There's multiple Atma
I just had a
yogas.
genius novel idea.
All right. Text number 2.
Oh, and senses also. Sorry, Atma is senses also. That was in the line right after.
Thanks
Okay.
for squeezing that in.
Yep,
That was very
you know it.
important.
You can count on me to squeeze it always in.
Okay, so text 2. Text 2, Arjuna is continuously talking. So this is Arjuna saying, who is the Lord of sacrifice? And how does he live in the body, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death?
Ooh,
Interesting. So we got to break this down
big
because
question.
first of all, he asks, who is the Lord of sacrifice? And that may refer to either Indra or Vishnu. And for a little more context, if you've forgotten, Vishnu is the chief of the primal gods, and Brahma and Shiva rewind,
Yes.
grammar.
You got this.
Vishnu is the chief of the primal gods, including Brahma and Shiva, and Indra is the chief of the administrative gods.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it's interesting because you have actually separate categories of demigods. You have the primal ones or primeval ones, or the ones that are kind of like, it's almost like a hierarchy. They're even beyond the administrative ones, because you have Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, who are like the creator, the maintainer, the destroyer.
Right, that's
They
like a
have
different category.
A different category.
Because we're talking about like the Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods, and we're talking about the rain, the demigods of rain, the demigods of like
of things within this world.
Weather,
that
money.
Yeah. So that's why Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods, while Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods. Kind of like, you know what it made me think of? In art, you have the primal colors that you can do different mixtures to do kind of like the
red,
secondary
blue,
colors.
Yellow.
Red, blue, yellow.
I forgot. That's why I didn't say it.
Yes.
Yeah, red, blue,
Yes.
red, blue, yellow.
Yeah.
So those are the red, blue,
Right.
yellow, because you need those to make
Right.
everything else.
Exactly. So that's why you have kind of like the primal ones, Vishnu, Brahma, Shiva, creation, and a destruction, maintenance. And, connecting this actually to our day-to-day lives, they say in Bhakti Yoga that out of the three, the energies of Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, creation, maintenance, destruction, I can apply that to maintenance of a household. Creation, it might be the easiest. I can create all sorts of things. Maintaining, once I do a great cleanup, is the most difficult.
Yes.
a mother would tell you otherwise.
Right.
She creates.
Right. Well, yeah. No, is it destruction or creation that's the easiest? But they go in order, because that's something my mom used to
Destruction.
always tell me, kind of to say, I need to maintain my room clean, and that's the hardest of the energies.
No, but what about a mother? Wouldn't creation be hard
Yeah,
for
creation
a mom?
is the-
But
they also have
to
to
maintain for 18
Yeah, that's
years is also
hard
pretty
too.
hard.
I think the
Yeah,
easiest
yeah.
one is destruction.
Okay, so it
Yeah.
might be, and there's actually an order that they say. It might be destruction the easiest, then creation. I always
Who's
forget
they?
the two. Well, my mom would always tell me to clean my room. So maintenance being the hardest, which is kind of like, which of the three, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, which is maintenance?
Vishnu. Right?
We all looked at each
No.
other.
Brahma creates,
Right,
Shiva
yeah, yeah,
destroys,
right.
Vishnu
Yeah.
maintains.
Yeah, because Vishnu is the mode of goodness. So they say cleanliness is godliness. So connecting it to the cleaning metaphor, Vishnu is the mode of goodness. So maintaining your room clean is the mode of goodness. Really, it all ties to the.
I've lost you so
I
hard.
know.
on this
I
analogy.
think. I mean, it
Have
was
you
really
guys
good.
not heard of this?
No.
No.
I think your mom made it up, but it's really lovely.
Wait, your mom made it up.
But it's really
Have you heard of
lovely.
this when like you tell someone to cleanliness is godliness?
that.
So
no,
Yes,
we've heard
we've
that.
heard that.
Cleanliness
What have
is
you not
close to
heard?
godliness.
The other thing you were trying to explain about cleaning your room.
Yeah, because whenever you have to maintain something, whether it's your room or a business or anything,
No,
maintaining is the most difficult. So they say like that mode of goodness is the most difficult to achieve. So clean your room, because that is like maintaining that.
Let's go with it.
I'm just saying, it sounds great. It went a little far from the
From the verse?
from the verse, just a little bit.
No, but that applies into our day-to-day lives.
1,000%.
I feel like it says Priya unconvinced.
No, I am convinced.
If you never clean and you let it go into ruins, then you
Fair.
have to spend like 2 days cleaning, while maintaining is the most difficult.
And that's why Arjuna's asking how. No, I'm just
We
kidding.
are
I was
just as
trying to-
confused as Arjuna right now, okay? Because Arjuna's like asking all these questions. Can you clarify?
And Shamli, like Krishna will come with the torch of knowledge about this metaphor. I'm kidding. Let's move on. All right. So,
Okay,
as
so
we
he's
said,
asking-
Vishnu, chief of primal gods, Indra, chief of administrative gods. So connecting it to the text, he's saying, okay, who is the Lord of sacrifice? Because both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped for yagyas. So he's kind of wanting to know, who is the king of sacrifice?
He's asking for clarification.
Yeah.
Okay.
And separately, how does the Lord reside within the body of the living entity? That's kind of
the time
two
of death.
questions.
And I think the biggest question for everyone who is on a spiritual journey, and I know that this is something that I ask myself all the time because I do think about this. I think Arjuna's last question here is so important. He says, and how can those engaged in devotional service know you, Krishna, at the time of death?
Right.
Oh, what a big question.
Yeah.
That's a huge question.
And it's every name Arjuna addresses Krishna as is also significant, because here he's addressing, just quick side note, and then the topic of death is like the biggest one of the text. Arjuna basically here addresses the Lord as Madhusudana because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. So since Krishna is so expert at killing or eradicating kind of demons of these negative energies, here it says Arjuna addresses him as Madhusudana so that Krishna may kill the demonic doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind.
Ooh,
So
full
there's
circle
like a
there.
beautiful backstory to everything.
Yeah, it says here that Arjuna is very anxious
Yeah.
to know of those who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness, like what should be their position at the final moment, right?
Exactly.
So he's asking these questions for us, actually.
For us, yeah.
Right, because we talked about in the previous episode, go listen to it if you haven't, that death is basically the biggest test. And they say like a lifetime in preparation. We spend preparing for that moment because as we kind of touched upon this the last episode, but at the time of death, basically all our bodily functions are going to be disturbed. Our mind's not in the proper condition. So we may find it hard to meditate now when we're in perfectly good health, but what to speak of when everything is shutting down in our body? Then what's going to kick in is what you've done every single day cumulatively of your life.
Yeah, whatever you've practiced in your life, that's what you're going to remember at the time of death. If you remember God sporadically throughout your life, it's going to be very, very difficult to remember him at the time of death when your mind's not working, you're in lots of pain. Yeah,
exactly.
So,
This made me think of back when we used to train for ice skating at that high level, the coaches would always say, if you haven't done something every single day leading up to the competition, don't change things up in the competition, because ultimately what's going to kick in is what you've practiced. So if you've never tried to develop love of Krishna, it's going to be really hard when at the time of death, you're in so much pain and then trying to face death fearlessly and not being scared, full of doubts, praying to Madhusudana at that time might be difficult.
Isn't that also like muscle memory too? Like
100%.
they told you not to try anything new because it's not ingrained in your muscles, right? So you're just going to be like doing it You're going to try a triple axel for the first time, like whimsically. You know what I mean?
Look at you with the terminology.
I know. I'm trying to impress Shamli right now. But you can't just like do something that you haven't trained your muscles to do.
Totally. Yeah, that's why I think it's nice when you feel you go through difficult moments in life and this kicks in a very silly way. The other day there was an earthquake and my roommate, it was in the middle of the night. It was not a huge one, but we felt everything shake a little bit and we both sat up and I didn't remember, but the next morning she told me, yeah, you sat up and said Krishna. And I was like, I did? Yes.
Oh, that's good.
It's working.
The test is working. That is very good.
Yeah. If there's anything else you guys want to add, there's one part that's, I don't know, we can summarize or read it. They're just some beautiful prayers that they say there was this a great devotee called Maharaj Kulaksetra, who had this prayer that kind of encapsulate this concept of how difficult it is at the time of death. Should we read it or just summarize?
Yeah, let's do it.
It says, "My dear Lord, just now I am quite healthy, and it is better that I die immediately, so that the swan of my mind can seek entrance at the stem of your lotus feet." And this is a metaphor used because the swan is a bird of the water that takes pleasure in digging into the lotus flower. It's basically a sporting activity to enter the lotus flower. So in this way, this Maharaj, this great devotee, says to the Lord, now my mind is undisturbed, and I am quite healthy. If I die immediately thinking of your lotus feet, then I'm sure that my performance of your devotional service will become perfect. But if I have to wait for my natural death, then I do not know what will happen, because at the time that bodily functions will be disrupted, my throat will be choked up, and I don't know whether I shall be able to chant your name. Better let me die immediately. So this is why Arjuna is questioning how a person can fix his mind on Krishna's lotus feet at such a time.
Yeah, and I think it's important because we talk about the time of death a lot, and I know that this is a concept that we've just started talking about and we're honing in on this, and I think it's so important. There's a friend of mine who was actually volunteering at a Bhaktivedanta hospital in India, and she was actually writing a book on like the hospice care in the hospital.
Yeah.
And she was telling me about this one devotee she's been a devotee for over 30 years. She has dedicated her life to Lord Krishna every single day, chanting, deity worship, like everything that you could possibly do. She was the perfect devotee. But at the time of death, like her mental functions were failing her. Her body was failing her. And it was so hard for her to she didn't even know what to think of, right? Like she didn't know how to chant anymore. She couldn't remember how to chant. And what was so interesting is that there was a nurse who walked in and said, "Hey, Hare Krishna." And she remembered that she was supposed to chant Hare Krishna. And after she got better, she came back and she thanked that nurse. And she said, "Thank you for saying Hare Krishna. Why did you say that?" And then she realized that, and the nurse literally just said, "I don't know." Because the nurse was a Muslim nurse, but for some reason she just said chant Hare Krishna to her, and she remembered that she was supposed to chant. But like at the time of death, it's so hard because our mind is probably, we're losing our marbles, kind of. You know what I mean? Like we're not in a good place mentally. Our body's failing us, and it's so hard to remember unless we have that muscle memory that keeps us remembering Krishna.
You know what your story made me think of? Krishna is so merciful because someone like that has done service, has dedicated her life to Krishna. Okay, if you get dementia, if you get something that's out of your control that doesn't allow you to remember him, he's not going to hold that against you. So then he sends someone working as an instrument of his power to
a Muslim
remember
nurse
Hare Krishna. And it made me think this is such a magical process because we can like receive such grace and give such grace when we're just when we open our hearts up to being instruments of God. He can work his magic through us.
Really, that woman was sent by Krishna just so that he could remind his devotee to chant when she couldn't remember herself.
Can I say one thing that reminded me of? It just popped into my head. I don't think I've said this before, but I used to be a caregiver and work with this boy with special needs. But before I got to working with him, I got called to see if I could work with this older lady. I ended up not because I think she passed away a week after. But essentially, I went to meet her. She was having a really difficult time. And I had just gotten to the caregiving scene, you know, so the one woman that orchestrates it all, she said, okay, there's a lady that needs help, la, la, la. I went to visit her and she was super old and had a hard time doing things on her own. So I met her on day one. And then I found out the next week she was kind of really going downhill. She was in the hospital. So I told the woman, this kind of was like my manager, like, can we go visit her? Because I had this feeling of like, I want to be there for a second. And she's like, okay, sure. So she drove us to the hospital, which was like further away from the town we were in. And I got there and I don't know what overcame me, but I didn't really ask like the front desk, like, where is so-and-so? Can I go see her? I looked over and through a hall, I saw her there. So I kind of like, no one was there. So I kind of snuck in, walked through the hall, went into the room she was in. And she didn't know me well. I met her once. I don't even remember her name, but I got close to her and I was like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I started chanting the whole mantra and she's like, girl, get away from me. And she was like in pain, but I remember just saying it to her and then I kind of left and I just felt like, what an interesting, like, why did I, at the very end for 2 seconds, enter this woman's life? And I thought, Krishna has a plan for her. He obviously wanted her to hear the Maha Mantra, which has such potency that if you hear it once, even if you're not actively engaged in it, you'll have the benefits of it. So I thought, well, this woman has done some beautiful, pious thing in her life that Krishna kind of made this arrangement that she could hear the mantra towards the end. And that was it. Then she passed away. A few days after that, I didn't work with her, anything. And then I continued on to the next caregiving.
What made you go into this random lady's room and just start chanting in Sanskrit? Why did you do that?
Again, I don't know. Like that woman said, why did she chant Hare Krishna?
I don't know.
I think also when you're part of this path, you know the potency of the mantra. It makes you want to like, let everyone hear it, you know? So that's why when you have that, consciousness, you want to spread it as much as you can. So I also thought, well, I don't know, I'm feeling pulled to want to go visit her. Let's see what happens. And it just kind of worked out.
I'm surprised no one called security on Channel.
Oh no, then we left real fast. I hopped back in the car and we were out of there. But she got to hear some mantras.
Yeah, but I think what's important right now is Arjuna's asking some very, very important questions. It's like, who's the Lord of Sacrifice? Like, and how do you remember you, Krishna, at the time of death? And that is a big question.
And on the thought of muscle memory, there's a story of Ajamil. Who named his child a name of Krishna.
Narayan.
And because of his attachment to his child, Narayan, he just called for his kid at the time of death. And it wasn't that he was necessarily fully dedicated to this mission of remembering Krishna, but by Krishna's mercy, it happened in the way that his kid was named that. And Krishna was like, okay, I will allow it because he thought of me.
Even if you don't like Krishna and you name your child a name of Krishna and you remember that name at the time of death, that's still a perfect loophole.
And it shows to what the muscle memory and also to like what we attach ourselves to in this lifetime helps, right? So then we surround ourselves with spiritual people, with spirituality in general, music, all these things. And then we get attached to these things and then it helps us at the end of our lives, right?
And I think I love that you bring that up, Priya, because it just shows also how merciful Krishna is, that even if you're not this perfect, elevated soul and know all the Vedic knowledge, he will take whatever you give. Ajamil called out a name of Krishna without even knowing he was, or without even thinking of Krishna, thinking of his son, but Krishna still took the essence and whatever he could, he takes the good in everything.
Yeah. And I like that Krishna believes in loopholes. You know what I mean? That's a God that I would like to worship. My loophole Lord. Yeah. All right. Anything else on this text?
Where were we? Text 2?
Text 2.
No, I think that's good.
All right. Text 3.
Shamali. Another 3 text episode.
Shamali.
All right. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma, or fruitive activities. So I feel like he's breaking down a lot of stuff we've heard before in the past here.
He's answering the questions, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
He's saying, so Arjuna's first question was, what is Brahman? And Krishna's saying, Brahman is the indestructible, transcendental living entity. So the jiva.
So the soul.
The soul.
The soul is Brahman.
So whatever's part of that indestructible and eternally existing energy, and it says its constitution is not changed at any time. So whatever's in the material realm has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but the Brahman energy is indestructible. And go ahead.
No, that's...
In the purport, they add a little more context. They say, but beyond Brahman, there is para Brahman. Because Brahman refers to us, the living entity, but para Brahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So those are different. It's not like, oh, it's all the same. We are Brahman, Krishna's Brahman, we are God.
No, that's good. That's good to distinguish, right? Because some people can be like, oh, if Brahman is me, I must be Brahman, which means Brahman is God, and that means I must be God as well, you know?
Right, exactly. Because essentially our position of the living entity as Brahman, it says the constitutional position of us is different from the position we take in the material world. Because if Brahman is our constitutional position, that's our soul. That's made up of Sat Chid Ananda, we've said, which is what?
Bliss,
eternality,
and knowledge.
Oh, very good, very good. A plus, 100%.
Yes.
So if that's us, Brahman, when we enter the material realm, we take on a different position, because in material consciousness, our nature is to try to be the lord of matter. What is like to lord over matter?
To try to control everything?
Yeah, right? It's like
try to be the controller.
Exactly. But when we're in our spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness, our position is to serve the Supreme. So I just like that distinction between Brahman and para Brahman.
Yeah. So what you read right now, it's in addition to what Krishna's answering. So the second question that Krishna answered. So the first question he answered was, what is Brahman? Right. And he said, it's you. It's the soul. It's the spirit soul. It's eternal. It's forever existing. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's the living entity. And now the second question is, what is fruitive activity? And so he says actions pertaining to the development of material bodies of the living entities is called karma, or fruitive activities. It's the same meaning. And what that means is...
Wait, say it one more time slowly. Rewind.
Yeah. Say that again slowly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So the second question that Krishna's answering for Arjuna is, what are fruitive activities? And he's saying action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma, or fruitive activities. Now, what that means, right, is like all the actions that we perform and anything that continues to build this material existence, right? Like, how do we put this?
So literally everything is karma. Everything that we do is karma.
Yeah. Like the food we eat, the music we listen to, but it's not just the things that we absorb. It's everything that we consciously act upon in this material world, everything that feeds into our bodily existence and our material existence.
Everything's so Taylor Swift was right when she was. Have you heard that song called Karma by Taylor Swift?
Well, how does it go?
He goes, karma is my boyfriend, karma is my God, karma is there's a lot of Do you want to come over? Ella? Because I think Taylor Swift, she's right, because karma is everything. Karma is all of our fruit of activities, right? Like everything that we do, everything we listen to, everything, right? So Taylor, let's go. Ella, let's go.
Karma is a breeze in my hair on the weekend. Karma is a relaxing thought. Aren't you envious that for you it's not?
Everything is karma, right? So this is what Krishna's directly. Thank you so much, Ella. Thank you.
Shout out to Taylor Swift.
Yeah, but it's true, right? And I know it's a silly pop song, but at the end of the day, like karma is everything. Right? Even like once someone asked me, they're like, is Taylor Swift actually being like spiritual in this? I was like, yeah. She said there's a lyric that says karma is the cat on my lap, right? And it's like, you've known this cat for previous lifetimes. You have karma with this cat. You know what I mean? So everything is
even
essentially
the line,
karma
is my boyfriend, which I don't know the song, but karma is my boyfriend. That makes sense. The karma that you accrue attracts the people in your life, which then help you lead more karma. So it's just all connected, 100%.
Right? Karma is your boyfriend, right? And
so whether you've known them from a past life or not known them from a past life, it's essentially that you're attracting people and situations to continue furthering you on your path. And with your karma means action. With your actions, you choose to elevate yourself or degrade yourself. So kind of like connecting that to what it was breaking down in the purport, that basically when the jiva or the living entity enters this material consciousness, we have to take different bodies in this material world. That is karma, or in other words, varied creation by the force of material consciousness. I like how they said that because that's essentially everything. Varied creation by the force of material consciousness. So with our material consciousness, whatever we create in a large variety, boom, karma.
And it also says, so it's like, according to how we identify with the material or spiritual nature, that's how we receive our material or spiritual bodies.
Right.
So that's why association is so important. However we identify in this material world, like, right, if we say, oh, I'm here in this material world to be the wealthiest, however we identify, we are creating karma for the future, for our future selves, in which we become furthermore those things, but it's an entanglement that comes with suffering and old age and disease. And it's not the goal. So it's like, it's very important to understand like how we identify ourselves. And it starts with self-realization, understanding we are the soul. Right?
I like that you said the word entanglement, because we choose to the degree that we entangle ourselves in this world. Because here it says sometimes we as the jiva, we merge into dark material nature and we identify ourselves more and more with matter. But sometimes when the rays of light shine through, we identify ourselves with the superior spiritual nature. So therefore, we're kind of part of the Lord's marginal energy. We're not part of his pure consciousness, even though the soul in our body is. So that's why it was an important distinction, connecting it back, that in Vedic literature, we, the living entity, were called Jivatma and Brahman, but we're never called Para Brahman. That's Krishna. We're never Krishna. And what Priya had just said about the more we entangled, we accrue different spiritual bodies. I just thought this was a fun fact. You know how many species of life form we can possibly be reincarnated into?
Like humans and animals?
8,400,000 species of life.
Wow.
But in spiritual nature, how many forms are there?
Only one.
Only one body.
Because there's only one soul.
Oh,
not that there's only one soul. That's all
for
of us.
you,
for us, right?
For
right,
you,
right.
for each individual you out there, right? So like you only have one soul, but you have millions of lives that you could potentially live. You can be a man, you could be like, these are the kinds of things that you can become, right? You can be a man, you can be a demigod, you can be an animal, a beast, a bird. And all of this depends on your karma, right?
Yep.
So
if
every
Taylor Swift were writing this song, karma is a man, karma is a demigod, karma is an animal, beast, bird, etc.
I don't know if Taylor would write a song like that.
I don't think so, but you know.
But all of those are connected to karma, because your whatever you choose to do in this life determines your next life. So if we want to attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities, okay, we might do yagyas and live a very pious life, but that's not going to take us to Krishna's abode, because to get to Krishna's abode, we have to develop love, devotion, service, because, even when we enter these heavenly planets, when our good merit or our good karma is exhausted, we then come right back again to earth in the form of a man.
I'm sorry, what sound do we make when we reincarnate back into earth? Boop, boop, boop. That's great. No, that's so real. That's very,
so we
very
want to
real.
get beyond this up and down. We've talked about it as a ladder, a rat race, all these different things. There was one last
Anything
part.
else, Shamli?
Why you say Shamli? Because
No,
you know
because
Shamli.
I just checked with the Priya. That's why.
With the Priya. Now the Shamli always squeezes stuff in. So at the very end, it just says, the Lord also speaks of the living entity as an eternal fragment of myself. So we are a fragment of God. So being a fragment of God, not fully, we're not God ourselves, we may also fall back down into the material world. But the Supreme never falls down. So that's an important distinguishing factor of Brahman, or the living entity, distinguished from Para Brahman. I just wanted to re-emphasize that.
Sweet.
All right. Text number 4.
Whoa, a 4-text episode?
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so waka. All right. Text number 4. Priyadarshini.
Oh, best of the embodied beings. This is still Arjuna. Let me just check. Yeah.
Or this is Krishna. This is Krishna answering. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, best of the embodied beings. The physical nature, which is constantly changing, is called Adibhuta, the material manifestation. The universal form of the Lord, which includes all the demigods, like those of the sun and moon, is called Adidvaiva. And I, the Supreme Lord, represented as a supersoul in the heart of every embodied being, am called Adiyagna, or the Lord of Sacrifice. Oh,
Wow.
he's answering the other question.
Yeah, who is the
answering
Lord of
all of them.
Sacrifice?
Can I read it one more time?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's a little
Please,
long.
please, for the love
We'll
of
break
God.
it down.
Yes.
Okay. So he's saying, oh, best of the embodied beings. So he's like really complimenting him. He's like, you are kind of like the best of all of those that have a
Oh,
material
it's like
body.
a nickname. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I was
Yeah.
like,
I want to request that as my next nickname.
yeah.
We'll
Best
we'll
of
think
the
about it.
embodied beings. Yeah. We'll deliberate on that, Shamli.
It'll take us a little while.
I'll be waiting.
So he's basically saying, oh, Arjuna, you who are kind of the best men out there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The physical nature, which is constantly changing, is called Adibhuta. Adibhuta.
Adibhuta.
The universal form of the Lord, which includes all the demigods, like the sun and the moon demigods, is called Adidaiva. So the universal form of the Lord, including the demigods. So it's just kind of like Krishna.
Everything that Krishna embodies includes all of the demigods.
Like if you see,
Thank you for saying it that way. That helped me visualize it.
Yeah.
we're going to get to a part, not yet, where Krishna really, unleashes his universal form, and it shows emanating from him the sun, the moon, all of the demigods lining up. Like it's quite, whoa. And you think, wow, all of this just came from this little beautiful being, Krishna, who was on this chariot a second ago. Like he doesn't reveal all the time to just anyone this form.
Yeah. And it also shows you that the demigods are not separate from Krishna. They are inside Krishna. Krishna is all of them, right?
Right.
They get all of their powers from the Lord. And so Krishna's universal form encompasses all of the demigods, the sun, the moon, everything.
It's just, like, who was it, Priya, that had told you, what is the essence of Bhagavad Gita? Remember Krishna and never forget him, because Krishna's everything.
yes.
The demigods come from him. There is that hierarchy where Krishna is everything. Like we often say, Gita is life.
Gita is
Krishna
life.
is life.
Yes. So Krishna basically says, physical nature has a name. The universal form has a name that it includes the demigods. And he says, and I, the Supreme Lord, represented as a super soul in the heart of every body, is called Adiyagya, which is the Lord of Sacrifice. So
Nailed
he's saying,
those Sanskrit.
so he's saying, thank you. He's saying that Krishna in our heart has a different name. Usually we call him Paramatma, but in this case, there's another name. And that name in Sanskrit, in English, it means the Lord of Sacrifice. Because,
Right.
if you remember back, one of Arjuna's questions was,
Right.
Who is the Lord of
who
Sacrifice?
is the Lord of Sacrifice?
I love, isn't this kind of cool that you can ask God all of these questions and he will literally answer every single one,
So
one by one by one.
When you tune
So
in
nice.
to the Modern Yogi podcast, we do the legwork for you. We're cross-referencing multiple texts. We're connecting the dots. We're making it make sense.
Make it
Yes.
make sense.
Yes.
With all
we
humility.
With all humility. With all humility. With all humility. So yeah, he's answering all of these questions, right?
Right. And
Can I just go to the second point? It's
Totally.
like when we see the sun and the moon outside, we can think of Krishna because
Right.
Krishna is literally saying, I am the sun and the moon.
Right.
I like that point.
And so it's interesting whenever we think of physical nature, the material world is constantly changing. I mean, we see it with our material bodies that pass through, they say, the 6 stages. 1, we are born. 2, we grow. 3, they remain for some duration. 4, they produce some byproducts. That's a funny way to call it.
Byproducts means children.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
5, they dwindle. And 6, they then vanish.
Wait, can you say them again? Because that was really funny.
Wait, what are you addressing? It's just so that everybody
I'm
knows.
addressing how the physical nature is constantly changing and our material bodies pass through 6 stages. 1, they are born.
Babies,
2, they grow.
Toddlers,
3, they remain for some duration.
teenage, young age.
adults,
Yeah.
4,
young adult.
they produce some byproducts.
Adults who produce children.
5, they dwindle.
Old age.
And 6, they then vanish.
Death. Wow. Waka waka. That's crazy.
And that's why this physical nature is called adibhuta. It is created at a certain point and will be annihilated at a certain point.
Interesting.
So that's why they say our present body, along with the individual soul, is the super soul. And that's a plenary representation of Lord Krishna. So that's still within where we're residing in this material world. It comes to an end. Our soul won't, but everything around us will. So the super soul is called Paramatma or Adiyagya.
There's so many names. I almost want to be like, not name them.
But
Right.
but it's
But we've
kind of
heard-
cute because like what it really means to me, because like sometimes I get confused by the name. So it's like the Krishna inside me.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And we've heard Paramatma before. Basically, you said Krishna inside me, the Krishna in my heart. And I love this last portion.
Oh,
It's very
I see what
cute.
you're saying. You're breaking it down. You said Adi Atma, so the Krishna inside me, because Atma is the soul and like Adi is like.
That's exactly what I meant by that. Yeah. I am a scholar. Yes.
Is that not what you meant?
No, but I'll take that. Yes.
I like that. I was just like, oh, you broke it down so we can understand.
Yeah, I did. Yes.
And connecting to the Paramatma or the Krishna in my heart, this last part is pretty endearing. The Lord stresses the Paramatma is non-different from him. So the super soul is the supreme personality of Godhead that's seated beside the individual soul. And he's essentially witnessing all of our individual soul's activities and is the source of the soul's various types of consciousness. So every type of consciousness we experience comes from Krishna within our hearts. And the super soul gives the individual soul an opportunity to act freely and witness his activities. So he's always just sitting there observing us. One Swami in our line, Giriraj Swami, said, how beautiful to think Krishna's always in your heart, just waiting there for the day you'll turn to look at him and give him your love.
oh,
very
that's
sweet.
so beautiful.
So yeah, so that was basically Krishna answering one of Arjuna's questions in this particular text. And we'll get to see what other questions Krishna answers.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So join us next time when we talk about chapter 8, text number 5.
See you next time.
Bye. Hello, beautiful souls. If you like what you're hearing, please follow us on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast.
And if you love what you're hearing, please make sure to share a link to our podcast at Modern Yogi Podcast with all your friends, families, and long lost cousins.
And if you have any questions at all, send us a DM on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Thank you for listening to
The Modern Yogi.